But first tonight, look, on this Often show, I often interview experts and scientists about the origins of COVID-19. We've investigated China's role in covering up news of the virus when the spread could have been prevented and at a point where lives could have been saved. The World Health Organization inquiry, the one that Australia called for, is meant to be crucial in unraveling this mystery of how the virus began and in getting to the bottom of China's spin. But there are now serious questions about the progress of this inquiry, and there are even demands that the chair resign. The human rights watchdog, UN Watch, has called on former New Zealand Prime Minister Helen Clark to recuse herself from the position of co-chair of the inquiry into the origins of COVID-19. They've criticised her appointment, saying she's praised the very organisation and countries whose actions she's meant to be investigating, the World Health Organization in particular. In April, Helen Clark tweeted an article sympathetic to the WHO's response to the pandemic. She said it had been in battle mode ever since China advised it about the new coronavirus, and she tweeted that she notes the WHO response has been guided by rules USA helped write, and that the agency needs support, not brickbats. This is extraordinary, given we all know the WHO's early response was appalling and directly cost lives when they said a travel ban wasn't necessary. And, I mean, it's shocking to think now when they said that the virus wasn't infectious and couldn't be transmitted from human to human. And this was despite evidence to the contrary and warnings from places like Taiwan. Then in an interview with Bloomberg just this month, on November 4, Clark was asked, would it have helped if, in the first weeks, the WHO was less gushing in its praise of China's reporting of their outbreak? She replied, the WHO is an international organisation and I led one myself for 8 years. You're in a position where it's very difficult to criticise any member state because you need their cooperation. So let's just get this straight. The chair of an inquiry into the origins of COVID-19 doesn't want to criticise China because it needs their cooperation. This is really worrying. Clark also appeared in an interview with a TV host who's been described by some critics as a Chinese state propagandist. It's James Chow. She did this interview in April. And in that interview, Helen Clark criticised the international community for their response to COVID, but praised the WHO, despite its misleading information about the pandemic in those crucial early days when the spread to other countries could have been prevented.
I think many people are shocked by the flat-footed response of the international community. Let's accept from that the World Health Organization, which has been on the case from the time it was first aware of the virus and has really tried to give global leadership on it, but not enough countries have been listening to it, nor learning the lessons from those who did move very fast to contain the spread of the virus and then work to eliminate it.
I mean, you heard what she just said there, and yet it was actually Australia that ignored the WHO advice, that implemented a travel ban that has had success. And she even defended the fact that the WHO did not advocate travel bans.
I've already had a lot of traffic on the text machine this morning, Helen, from people saying, look, I will not forget that the World Health Organization in February was castigating countries like New Zealand for closing its borders and imposing travel bans on places like China. Is that the sort of stuff you'll be investigating?
I think that any texts and messages you've got asserting that are really a bit strong. The WHO has never advocated travel bans, but I don't think it's particularly castigated people either. The reality is that the travel ban for people coming in from China worked for New Zealand. A lot of countries now have travel bans on, but the WHO, with no power whatsoever to enforce anything around pandemics, is always cautious about advocating anything like a ban because it fears it would lose cooperation.
Well, as this tweet from the WHO chief shows, the organisation did in fact warn against travel bans. This was on February 1st, 2020. As you can see, there are real questions here about whether Helen Clark is prepared to be critical at all of the World Health Organization or China or any other country that might be offended, and she needs their cooperation for this inquiry. It's deeply concerning given how crucial this inquiry is and how hard Australia fought for it, and how we are now still suffering the consequences from China, the latest with the tariffs on wine of up to 200%. But now there's another twist to this story. Media reports that highlighted some of these concerns around Helen Clark's role have been deleted. There were 2 New Zealand articles that covered the call for Helen Clark to resign. One was on a media outlet called News Hub, and it had the headline, UN watchdog urges Helen Clark to resign from global COVID-19 inquiry. Then there was another in the New Zealand Herald. The News Hub one completely disappeared, along with a second News Hub article from July that was headed, UN watchdog takes aim at Helen Clark over her World Health Organization role. 2 News Hub articles completely deleted. And the third, the New Zealand Herald article, was deleted and then later restored, sometime later, but rewritten from Helen Clark's perspective. It said the cause for her resignation were a politically motivated smear. Clark says, I have no ties with China at all. The open letter, publicised by a small group in Geneva, consists of a mix of outright falsehoods, misrepresentation and distortion. It is, in other words, a smear. She repeated this on Twitter, where Helen Clark said, the story was demonstrably false. Those pushing it are trying to smear me and damage the work of the independent panel. I am and have a reputation for being an independent global figure. I am not at the beck and call of any state.